didn't get much sleep.
Too excited for your bowl of Lucky Frosted Cocoa Tricks? It's part of a complete breakfast.
From where? Dairy Queen's dumpster?
Now don't be like that. I poured you each a bowl of that last Saturday in preparation for this.
You mean this has been out for a week?
It helps open up the flavors.
I had a big dinner.
And I'm vegetarian. I'm pretty sure that used to be alive.
Hey, suit yourself.
Okay, Critic, can you explain why we're up at dick o'clock in the morning?
I forgot at your humble age. You're not aware of the ritual of Saturday morning. You see, Saturday morning used to be a special time for kids. We'd often have friends sleep over the night before and then wake up to the majesty of television's Saturday morning cartoons. Each one filled with brain-rotting material, coaxing us to buy teeth-rotting material. Unfortunately, TV did its job too well, and the following generation said, let's just have this shit raise our kids 24/7. Thus, every second of every goddamn day was Saturday morning cartoons, and they got rid of them years later. Society sucks.
Okay, we're not 10 years old. We had Saturday morning cartoons too.
We're just wondering why we're here this Saturday morning.
Oh, well, that's because we're paying homage to one of the best in Saturday morning awesomeness, Fox Kids. In 1990, the then still young Fox network aired its Saturday morning lineup of shows called Fox Kids. It included bumpers, PSAs, catchy songs, and of course, some of the best kids shows to ever air on TV. Eventually branching out to Monday through Friday as well, Fox Kids lasted 12 years, an unbelievable run when you consider its counterpart, the Disney Afternoon, lasted only 7 years. While half of these shows can still be viewed today, some of them have sadly never gotten a DVD release or were never aired again. So keep in mind, we're not gonna look at every single show that aired on Fox Kids because, like I said, this is 12 years of material. We're just gonna look at the most unique, inspired, and memorable parts of the greatest Saturday morning lineup there was. So, with our sugar-coated poison in hand,
Younger kids wanting to watch what the older kids are watching.
Hey guys!
can we watch the shows too?
And an overprotective parental who thinks if it's not Sesame Street, it's bad for them.
I'm sorry, kids, but you're too young to see this kind of stuff.
I'm older than half of them over there!
Shoo, shoo.
I hate you! You're not even my real father!
Kids, are you enjoying Saturday morning?
Yes, Dad!
That's good. I'm gonna go make some waffles on the stove just for you.
Do we have a stove?
Well, we'll figure out how that happened later. This is Fox Kids!
Sit back, chill out, see what all the talk's about. Everybody knows it's on Fox. The Tiny Toons and Dynamo cracked it up with his own joke.
What was that?
It was complicated. We'll get to it when we get to it.
Everybody knows they're on Fox. Now Batman's gonna show you he's the greatest superhero. Eat the cat, Taz, and Bobby Super Dave commentary.
That doesn't rhyme.
Keep going, keep going!
On Fox. Dog City, X-Men 2, Mary Melody's Beetlejuice. Everybody knows. They're on Fox. It's on Fox. It's on Fox. It's on Fox. It's on Fox. Oh, big surprise with fresh new faces. Now you know in the cool places. Everybody knows.
It's on Fox! Let's start with one of their earliest staples, Bobby's World.
Oh, I've seen this. It's like if Calvin and Hobbes were made by Ned Flanders.
Hey, it's a lot more than that.
Sounds pretty accurate.
Yeah, okay, it's pretty accurate. Bobby's World was based off of the little boy voice that comedian Howie Mandel did for his popular stand-up.
If that parrot Fred can't sing, gonna kill that one too. That's my name.
And because the 90s were a strange time where crude comedians got kid-friendly shows, he was given one of his own. Just look at how awkward he is in the live-action openings.
Hi everyone, I'm Howie. Welcome to Bobby's World. And you know what I really hate? Of course you don't, because you don't know me. You know what I hate?
Germs! God, I hate germs! Though certainly aimed at a younger demographic than the other Fox Kids shows, Bobby's World showcased the imagination of a little boy misinterpreting what adults say. Either that or he swallowed all of his mother's NyQuil. Either way, neat. The characters included Howie as his father with the Jew-fro rat tail haircut. Common? The cast of Fargo as his mother.
And then you need to go upstairs and wash your face and hands before we leave for Aunt Ruth's, don't you know?
His older brother representing the 90s trying to kill the 80s, and his older sister representing the 80s refusing to die. Along with Uncle Ted to give his obligatory fart joke.
How come you can make bubbles without putting your face in the water?
Tell you what, Pablo, let's just keep that our little secret, okay?
Poop! Bobby had children's fantasies often based on movies a kid his age wouldn't see yet. Looks like somebody read the kid-friendly version of Die Hard.
So, was it any good?
It was hypnotizingly unoffensive. It's for little kids, so it's simple but imaginative. It even had possibly the first Saturday morning character to get pregnant, and we actually see her progression throughout the season. Little touches like that make it stand out just enough. And I guess kids thought the same thing because it was surprisingly one of Fox's longest running shows. Add a catchy as hell theme song and you have a decent start to the Fox Kids lineup.
That's cool and all, but how about some more violent stuff?
Well, you're in luck, because this network also had Tom and Jerry.
Yes!
Kids.
I retract that yes.
Talking about the Tom and Jerry kids.
Yeah, another strange trend in kid shows for a while was just making famous characters younger. Because if there's anything better than seeing someone brutally dismembered and maimed, it's seeing it happen to them as children?
Finally somebody gets it! I have issues.
It was pretty much the same thing as the regular Tom and Jerry cartoons, except it was done with kids. So the slapstick wasn't nearly as violent and therefore not nearly as funny. Granted, it had other characters too, like Spike and his son Tyke, Droopy and his son Dripple. In fact, how are Tom and Jerry younger if their counterparts are the same age? And how is Skyfall a prequel if M is in GoldenEye? Also, how did Minions exist with dinosaurs millions of years ago?
This is a road you don't want to go down.
Okay, I'll never bring it up again.
Ever.
Much like Bobby's World, this was obviously meant for smaller children, so it was tamer and more gentle than previous versions.
So not good.
Yeah. But for little kids, it gets the job done, I guess. I mean, it is better than other outings Tom and Jerry have had recently.
Never forget those faces.
It lasted a few seasons though, so it obviously had its fans. It's not the cat and mouse team we remember, but it's not obnoxious either. It wasn't harmful enough to be Tom and Jerry, but it was harmless enough to be a decent distraction for little kids.
Tom and Jerry kids. The Tom and Jerry kids do show.
But let's get to something more grisly and adult, Peter Pan and the Pirates. Let me explain. We all know the classic book, play, Disney film, and childhood scarring, but few adaptations of Peter Pan ever captured the darker and surprisingly more adult take of the original J.M. Barrie story than this one. I know that sounds strange, but this was actually a really great show. They were ideas that took concepts from the original book and pushed them even further. For example, Peter steals the pirates' shadows, and what happens? They walk upside down because they've lost their anchor to the ground. That's so creatively strange, but it weirdly makes sense. In another episode, Peter is gone for too long and forgets about everybody because he's distracted by Wendy's future daughter in the real world, who he brings back to Neverland to meet her future mother despite them being roughly the same age.
Bye, Uncle Michael. Uncle John, why are you sad? Because I learned today that I shall have to leave Neverland sometime. But I'm happy, because when I do, I'm going to have a daughter as wonderful as you.
It's super surreal, but it's also surprisingly adult. It's kind of like the ending of Return to Neverland where young Peter meets older Wendy. That's a lot of people's favorite part of that movie, and this show is mostly comprised of scenes like that. The characters all have fleshed out personalities, with Peter always hungry for mischief, the Lost Boys and Pirates all having distinct character traits, and in my opinion, the best Captain Hook ever portrayed, played by the only actor who could perfectly portray him. Literally, the first perfect thought that comes into your head is who plays him.
Tim Curry.
You're goddamn right, Tim Curry!
If I must die, I will encounter darkness as a bride and hug it in my arms.
This is the first Captain Hook that has dimension to him. Yes, he's an angry screamer and a scoundrel, but he prides himself on being a gentleman and a sophisticate. One minute he's ready to stab your heart, but the next he might let you go if you make him laugh with a reading of Shakespeare.
Oh, dear God, they give you death by inches. No, Shakespeare, give thanks that you aren't here to witness this atrocity.
He was an egotist, but still valued his bizarre ethics. It made him both funny and intimidating at the exact same time. And nowhere is the series' complexity shown best than in its series finale, where Peter decides he does want to grow up and he starts to wither away into an old man, unaware that he's actually taking Neverland with him. So you could argue Hook was being portrayed even before Hook was doing it. It's surprisingly intense and unbelievably well done. It lasted for only one season, but it resulted in a ton of episodes and had a pretty good life in reruns. Criminally, though, there is no DVD release of it. If you're able to find it on YouTube or anywhere else, definitely watch as many of them as you can. It's a cannonball of imagination waiting for you.
That's all fine and good, but what about the poor people who demand a series about demonic fruit? I had no segue into the show.
So, because we apparently demanded it, Attack of the Killer Tomatoes was given its own cartoon series. Based on the B-movie comedies, it did have some of the original characters, like Igor, Tara, that parachute guy, and even John Astin reprising his role as the mad scientist who made the evil vegetables.
Fruit.
It's 2018, nobody uses that term anymore. It certainly had the strangeness of the films down, but it didn't have much more beyond that. The plot is similar to the movies in that a mad scientist wants to take over the world with the tomatoes, and his failed experiments, Tara and FT, and tomato war veteran Wilbur tries to stop him. He gets help from the main lead, a boy who was not in the movies, and you can clearly see why. He's pretty bland and forgettable, and the animation doesn't do him or any of the other characters any favors.
You know you're supposed to stay away from salt. If someone sees you change...
What is up with this girl? Is the binary code on her neck being hacked?
Must blackmail George Clooney with Return of the Killer Tomatoes footage.
Yo, zucchini.
Look at this scene. She has to lean over to talk to FT, but look how she does it.
It's Igor, Dr. Gangrene.
What the hell? Is this part of the joke, or is it just poorly animated? The whole show is kind of like this, leaving you with no idea what's intentional and what isn't. Even the dialogue, you can't figure out what they're aware of and what they're not.
Being a luscious, ripe tomato can be hard on a girl.
Whatever you're thinking, erase it from your heads.
I had a line about her being saucy, but never mind.
I guess on a level of bizarre awkwardness, I can see this entertaining a few, but for many kids, the most memorable part of the show is the theme song. But goddamn, that's a catchy theme song. But not all the Fox Kids shows started off on Fox Kids. A charming story about a dead man who befriends an underage girl he was going to marry.
Finally, somebody who gets it.
Do I have to worry about you?
You might.
Beetlejuice had only the slightest connection to the movie, which was surprisingly welcomed as it allowed for a lot of wild and inventive designs. Granted, in the movie, everyone looks the way they do because they died that way. Here, I don't know how the shit they were supposed to die to look like this. Tim Burton himself helped design the show, and it certainly shows in all the strange people and creatures. It had little in terms of plot, but it had a lot in terms of visual and gross-out humor. At a time especially when there wasn't much in terms of dark or macabre cartoons, this one gave us a small but still memorable taste of the enjoyably morbid. It was a waste of time, but it was a fun waste of time. But I know what you're thinking. If Beetlejuice got a cartoon, why not Little Shop of Horrors?
Because no one was thinking that.
Just for that, the plant raps.
No!
Yeah!
Little shop, take me to the...
Little Shop is based on the musical interpretation about the man-eating plant, except Seymour is now a little boy, the plant raps instead of sings, and absolutely none of it looks completed.
You got buttons on rubber that spit out smoke. If this place weren't so sorry, it'd be a big joke. That's why I'm out of here, you know what I'm saying?
This looks more like the bumpers you see before they go to commercial.
You don't give those bumpers enough credit. The focus of the show is the plant is trying to get Seymour to win the girl and defeat the bully while also running a plant shop that's constantly infested with bad musical numbers.
My business is a bust. Business, what a joke.
God, I wish this had the original cinematic ending. Why is he even shocked the plant is talking? The flowers act as backup singers all the time. I'm not even sure the plant is talking, his lips move so rarely.
C is for commuter train. Many parts are edible.
I guess I can give credit that for a show that had a budget of monkey feces, the backgrounds are at least creatively simple. I mean, I'm sure the layout artist had 2 minutes to color these on Mario Paint, but there is at least a little structure in between the poorly animated sections. Oh god, he's having a stroke. Nope, that's just a bad show.
Something's gone bad. It's a crime of disgrace. You got stone for ground. Walls in your face.
The writing doesn't make any sense either. The girl in the show is obsessed with a refrigerator. I'm going to repeat that. The girl in the show is obsessed with a refrigerator, and they never explain why.
It's the most beautiful thing I've ever seen. I think it's really cool.
Women.
Hey, my love of refrigerators has nothing to do with my gender. Now, if you'll excuse me. Oh, I love you so much. You're so good to me. I love you so much.
Clearly, Little Shop of Horrors was ahead of its time.
Like I said, this has little redeeming value, but I'm sorry, I have to reference a Little Shop of Horror cartoon show in the 90s where the plant raps. I know you think it's a crime it exists, but it's an even bigger crime to act like it doesn't exist. The show lasted only 13 episodes before it was yanked, and you can see why this fertilizer didn't get far.
Word, Little Shop.
I'm noticing a pattern of characters that most likely wouldn't make a good show.
Not making a good show?
Were there any existing characters that allowed for clever writing or intelligent dialogue?
Yes, really. Warner Brothers was given the task of turning one of their most profitable Looney Tunes, the Tasmanian Devil, into a hit show. How do you do that, though, when his dialogue is mostly... Well, they ingeniously make everyone else very well spoken. Even to the point of it being ridiculously overwritten.
Accumulate a portfolio of stock with a net yield of no less than 36% per annum.
There's nothing like a paper and a reclino-craft chair for a man after a tough day of doing whatever it is I do for a living.
To rekindle the lost flame that connects our souls with the true harmony of the universe.
Now I am in a quandary. Technology's the culprit here. Science be blamed.
Because of this, not only did Tasmania have a distinct sense of humor, but its writing was surprisingly ahead of its time, along with other shows like Duckman and Simpsons. Yes, really. Based in the land down under, where Wacko Warner sings the theme song.
Welcome to Atlantic's Way, under, down, under.
Taz lives with his talkative family, interacting with his talkative friends, and partaking in the conversations as little as possible. Much like the other Warner Brothers shows, there's a lot of fourth wall breaking, a lot of slapstick, and like I said, surprisingly a lot of talking. Again, from a show where the main character talks like this. Though not talked about by many, Tasmania still had an impressive 4-year run. It had good animation, good timing, and actors who had to talk a surprising mouthful for a show about a Tasmanian devil.
Ferociously intense. Not that he's likely to make much progress, given his choice of methodology.
Got a house to show, a career seminar to attend, some charity work to do, and a dinner party to prepare. So my schedule's pretty much open.
It's so strange this would be both as funny and as wordy as it is. But maybe that's part of the bigger joke in general, that the most dialogue-focused slapstick children's show was around this guy.
Shall we pause to consider this irony? Maybe later.
Sadly, there's only a few DVD releases of this show. It honestly deserves a lot more. The episodes you can find, though, are a ton of laughs and had a lot more work put into them than they probably deserved. To put it short, Tasmania is a heck of a spin.
Come to Tasmania, we need you!
Nothing. I'm watching Tiny Toons here on Nickelodeon. Very innocent, wholesome quality. Wheels of the bus go round and round, round and round.
What was that about?
Oh, well, Tiny Toons is up next.
But what did that have to do with it?
Because that scene always bothered me. It wasn't on Nickelodeon, it was on Fox Kids. And they didn't do stuff like sing the wheels of the bus go round and round. It had good writing, it was a good show! Shame on you, Seinfeld, shame on you!
Oh my god, okay.
I'm sorry, I never had an outlet to talk about that clip. It always bothered me. It always bothered me. They got so many things wrong about that clip. It was a good, decent show. It just has been building up for a while.
Critic, it's not your fault.
I know.
It's not your fault.
I know.
It's not your fault.
Don't do this to me, man.
It's not your fault.
Don't do this to me, man. Not you, man.
It's not your fault.
Stop it, not you!
It's not your fault.
Tiny Toons. We're tiny, we're toony, we're all a little loony.
Though having a very successful run in syndication, Fox Kids bought Tiny Toons and ran it from its 3rd season on. It was one of the few shows based on the younger version of popular characters that branched out not only to be successful and funny, but also obtain its own identity over time. Characters like Elmira, Montana Max, and Furball were all very different from their counterparts Elmer, Yosemite Sam, and Sylvester. The nice thing is, while in syndication, there was definitely a lean towards being more kid-friendly, but when it went to Fox, they broke out more of the classic Looney Tunes humor, with celebrity jokes, in-jokes, satire, a Buster that sounded eerily close to the Crypt Keeper.
Tunes from the crypt.
It played well. So well that one of the most popular characters, Plucky Duck, was given his own show that same year.
Yeah, so what was that?
It's complicated. You see, the first episode of the spin-off was actually hilarious. They're acknowledging he's getting his own show, but he abandons it to try and be Batman in Tim Burton's next movie. It's amazing how funny it is. The violence, the satire, the celebrity in-jokes.
Tim! I should be Catwoman, you know it! Look at me! Roar! Roar!
It had a ton of viewers rolling on the floor with laughter. It was so good.
That sounds great. What happened?
That was the only new episode. They weirdly just started showing clips from other Tiny Toons episodes where Plucky Duck was the focus. So what was supposed to be the Plucky Duck show just became the best of Plucky Duck, a clip show. Maybe this was filler for a show they didn't make in time. Maybe they only animated the pilot but pulled the plug like what they did with the Elmira show. Whatever they did, it faded quickly, resulting in only 13 episodes. Regardless, we still got a pretty funny first episode and a ton of great material from the original Tiny Toons, giving it a memorable and hilarious run.
It's Tiny Toon Adventures, come and join the fun! And now our song is done.
But not every show gets the attention it deserves.
I know what you mean.
That masterful work will have its day. But I was talking about Eek the Cat. In a world filled with Ren and Stimpy knockoffs, Eek the Cat was arguably one of the first. But just like those other shows, it had a similar style, but still its own hilarious identity. The opening sums it up perfectly. He has a dream about helping someone, wakes up to reality, and everything tries to kill him. That's basically the plot of every episode. The world is trying to punish him for all the good deeds he does. But nevertheless, Eek is always kind and optimistic, always helping people no matter what's thrown at him.
It never hurts to help.
And indeed, a lot of strange things are thrown at him. It's a world where snacks can blow up in your head. Cuddly bears are greeted with machine guns. And Ross Perot was commander-in-chief, back when that was the craziest person who could be president. There was a mean-spirited creativity to it that was held together by just how gentle and helping Eek is.
Hey, no swimming for an hour after you eat. You don't want to get a cramp.
No matter what, he always wanted to help, even if it meant getting pummeled.
Well, at least the beautiful planet of Earth has been spared, and those bad aliens will never do such bad things again, and someone will be here to get me soon. I'm just sure of it.
Hell, the biggest curse word he ever used was kumbaya.
Kumbaya, wait!
Granted, as the show went on, they seemed to run out of ideas, so they started putting him in several movie parodies. They were fine, I guess, but it was a little odd, even for this show. To make things even stranger, the time slot was suddenly being shared with another show. Suddenly it was called Eekstravaganza, and half the running time was dedicated to thunder lizards, a series about dinosaurs who were trying to wipe out a new species called man. At the moment, there's only 2 of them, and they're constantly screwing up trying to evolve. These guys are like the prototype for SpongeBob and Squidward, except the sexual tension might be a little greater with them. The show was pretty funny, but not as good as Eek. Nobody minded too much that the shows were cut in half, as we still got our daily dose of strange, and the show had a good run of 5 seasons. Sadly again though, there's no DVD release, hence the watermark. With the rise of even more surreal humor and internet culture, this really should be more available to the public. It was mean, violent, cruel, relentless, yet funny enough had a good heart at the center of it. Eek definitely needs to make a comeback, and hopefully somebody out there can make it happen in the future. But there's stuff for dog lovers too. Jim Henson's Dog City, for example, lasted for 3 seasons. Based on Henson's short film from another TV series, the show opened in the puppet world where an animator created a private eye show about a detective named Ace Hart. It then jumps into animation as Ace constantly battles the gangster Bugsy Vile with the help of Chief Rosie O'Gravy and paper pup named Eddie. As you'd imagine, there's a lot of dog puns in this, which is usually annoying, but after a while there's so many of them, you're kind of floored so many could exist.
I did some sniffing around, trying to get a leg up in the case.
Pavlov brand beef biscuits.
Bernard St. Bernard.
St. Paul!
Not much bark, but what about our bite?
Station WFIDO.
Some thought he was 1 table scrap short of a full doggy bag.
I'm annoyingly intrigued.
Like many Jim Henson projects, there's a charm in how kid-friendly it wants to be. For example, the animator hates violence, so guns are usually replaced with rolled-up newspapers. And when guns do eventually make their way in, he switches it out for a senseless showdown. It's kind of adorable.
Diving into unknown waters is senseless, but is it as senseless as running with scissors? I think not.
The strange thing is, Fox would do another dog detective show called Droopy Master Detective. What was up with this concept? They had the same obsession Disney Afternoon had over ducks. Did they just think this would be the next big thing? Did they even watch this show? While Droopy was canned pretty quickly, Dog City had a pretty decent run. So I guess if you're a dog detective person, I'm a cat detective person myself, Dog City is cute enough to give a viewing.
You know, Critic, I gotta admit, these shows are fine, but they're not really mind-blowing.
Yeah, where's the really cool stuff?
Well, over the next 3 years, Fox Kids would have their highlights. They would give us the most incredible, awesome, badass shows any kid's ever seen at the time. Dad, stop butting in!
I'm just trying to help.
You're embarrassing me in front of my friends! Go away!
Okay. I love you, son.
Love you too.
I didn't quite hear that.
Love you too.
I can't hear you.
I love you too!
Oh, Critic loves his dad!
Get out of here, Dad! You ruin everything! Stop it! I do not! Shut up! Shut up! I'm supposed to be badass! I'm bad! Stop it! Stop it, all of you! I hate you all! I'm never having you back! No! Okay, seriously, stop. So even though Fox Kids was growing, it still wasn't the dominant force in Saturday morning or kids shows. But year 3 is when all of that started to change. Fox Kids expanded from Saturday morning to weekday afternoons, which was a risky and expensive move. If they wanted kids to constantly be watching, they needed some kick-ass shows to keep them hooked. Thankfully, they had little gems like this, and this, and this. Now, I've talked to death about these shows in the past, so I'll do my best to talk about something different about the impact that they had. First, Batman the Animated Series. After 2 wonderfully dark Batman movies, an animated version of The Dark Knight not only won both kids and adults over, but it served as a game changer for Batman in general. A lot of writers went on to several other Batman canon projects. Several characters and backstories created for the show made their way to the official Batman lore. And even to this day, when most people read Batman comics, the voices that pop in their heads are always Kevin Conroy as Batman and Mark Hamill as the Joker. It's hard to read them without making that connection.
Wherever you go, I'll be right behind you.
That's all, folks.
Unlike other kid shows at the time, Batman took years to develop, resulting in a unique style not often seen in many animated series. The backgrounds always started off on black paper to keep the dark environment of the show consistent. The characters and buildings had an Art Deco style as opposed to a pulp comic style like all the other shows. And the atmosphere in general was more adult, allowing for quieter moments, slower pacing, and more realistic acting. There was no other animated action series that looked like this at the time, and now, every animated action series is trying to look like this. It walked the perfect tightrope between too playful and funny and too dark and gritty. It seemed like it incorporated everything. It felt true to the comic roots, worked in the adult side of the movies, had a good laugh at the campiness of the situations, and yet somehow also felt like its own unique vision. It's just as good today as it was when it first premiered, and no other Batman show has ever topped it. Think about it, after all these years and all the other incarnations that have come out, no other show has done Batman as well. It's just as clear today as it was years ago why this was a huge game changer. But Warner Brothers was breaking new ground with another game changer! What? I was just talking about Animaniacs. Oh, I see. You guys think I talked about it too much, huh?
If Animaniacs was a prostitute, you'd have paid off 5 of her house loans.
Yeah, what? Did they save your cat or something?
No, but through the magic of wishful delusions, now they have. Fine, I'll keep it short. Seen as the follow-up to Tiny Toons, Animaniacs was a variety show that stepped up its game. Every episode had a plethora of great songs, memorable characters, hilarious animation, but most important of all, brilliant writing. It was truly the closest we ever came to experience the fresh comedy of the original Looney Tunes. They had the great comebacks, the violent slapstick, the imaginative take on the world we all wanted to experience. This must have been similar to when people saw a Bugs Bunny cartoon for the first time on the big screen. There was just an excitement that you were going to see something clever, funny, and filled with so much energy they felt alive. Along with Batman and Tiny Toons, it was one of the few shows that had an entire orchestra providing the music. And speaking of which, the brilliant songs are still being used by kids today to pass countless school exams. In fact, they even keep updating the songs to coincide with the constantly changing world. In fact, these songs even went on tour with songwriter Randy Rogel and actor Rob Paulsen singing their infectious earworms. They're still that popular. It seems the show was so popular that's even being rebooted. In 2020, these characters are coming back to give their take on modern day insanity. Imagining the shots they can take with the internet, trends, politics. It's crazy exciting to see where this can go. Will it be as good as the original? I guess only time will tell, but one thing's for sure, we'll always have these timeless, classic, hilarious characters to look back on.
Animaniacs, those are the facts.
Now on to a show I know I've barely talked about, X-Men.
Oh!
Will you two knock it off?
You knock it off. You've talked about this show so many times, there's nothing left to cover.
Oh yeah? I bet I can find something new to talk about.
Prove it.
Fine! Apparently it was the passion project of the head of Fox Kids. Margaret Loesch ironically used to be the head of Marvel Television, producing hit after hit except in one category. Funny enough, the Marvel characters never caught on in TV. Every attempt seemed to bomb, including an early version of X-Men where Wolverine was Australian.
Wait, she's not joining the X-Men, is she? She's just a kid!
That's almost too ironic.
She went from studio to studio trying to get X-Men made, but they all said the same thing. It was too adult and nobody would watch it. Margaret then went on to be the president of Fox Kids and cared so passionately about getting X-Men a TV series that she put her job on the line. They knew if this was gonna be good, a lot of money had to be thrown at it, so she took the gamble but picked the right producers, writers, and actors to make it work. The only downside is there was not much time to make it work. In fact, the tone and animation were so campy and off-key in the first season that they only had 2 episodes for the big October premiere, that being the 2-part pilot. What the hell do you do when you need months and months to rework your show? You present the first 2 episodes as a preview. Yeah, it pissed off the advertisers and cost a fortune, but Margaret and showrunner Eric Lewald knew they had to get this right if they were gonna have a hit. The preview thankfully went over incredibly well and left people wanting more. So, after a redo of the show with better animation and more adult atmosphere, it finally premiered with no other new shows being put on. That's right, because they waited until spring, it got more attention because everything else was reruns. As you'd imagine, the numbers were through the roof. X-Men was suddenly Fox's biggest hit. It represented more than cool heroes with powers. It grasped the prejudice and torture character arcs, as well as the all-around badass nature people love from the comics. After being told no over and over from several studios and even ignoring advice from Stan Lee to make it more kid-friendly, the creators stuck to their guns and turned in a huge payday. Much like the X-Men who had to fight for human dignity, so did the creators who wanted to see their timeless characters done right. X-Men would go on for 5 seasons, one of Marvel's longest running series. It launched them into the mainstream more than before, leading to several reboot series, comic spin-offs, and of course a beautifully inconsistent movie franchise. This was a gamble that paid off all the way to the X-Bank. So, with those 3 gigantic hits, Fox Kids was moving on to their next big...
Aren't you forgetting another hit show?
Don't think so.
Yeah, one that still makes like a butt ton of money even today.
No, there's no other hit shows at that time. Fine, there might have been another teeny incy wincy hit of a show called Mighty Morphin Power Rangers.
Go, go, Power Rangers!
It's no secret I never got into this show, even as a kid. It was just... so dumb. The same time Batman and X-Men were on, we had...
About that double date we talked about?
Yeah.
so dumb. But okay, let's talk about it a bit, because on the one hand, it is a brilliant marketing strategy. 5 teenagers
with attitude
are summoned by Jabba the Fuzzy Mouth to stop a space witch named Rita for her crimes of bad lip syncing. They first do a martial arts fight against a monster of the week, and then they grow in size and use giant robots in a fight against Los Angeles Japanese mountains. So yeah, the setup was pretty obvious. Shoot American actors for dirt cheap and then cut to Japanese stock footage from another hit show in Japan. Power Rangers, of course, turned into a huge hit. Which meant as long as they were still making shows in Japan, oh god, they'll never stop! They could keep making shows here. Power Rangers was not only the longest running series on Fox Kids, but it surpassed it. Even after Fox Kids shut down, the show still continues to have an impressively long-lasting life. It had many spin-offs, storylines, reunions, callbacks, and tons of B-movie monsters to fight. On the one hand, I really wanted to like this show because, hey, martial arts, giant robots, killer monsters, that can be some fun shit. But...
Guess you finally flipped over me.
so dumb! It was clearly past my time and not for me, but that doesn't mean they didn't tap into something that excited a shit ton of kids. And some very disturbed adults years later. Power Rangers, whether you like it or not, was, and still is, an impressive spectacle. But it wouldn't be the 90s unless we forcibly had to teach you shit.
Where is Carmen Sandiego? Carmen Sandiego!
Thankfully, some shows were better at it than others. Like Where on Earth is Carmen Sandiego?
Rockapella.
Nope. This was a different kind of Carmen Sandiego, one that was on a kid's computer game that tried to educate you.
That's exactly what Carmen Sandiego is.
Okay, maybe not that different. The on-screen player always had to pick two characters to go after Carmen, and he always picked the sister and brother duo, Ivy and Zach.
Oh god, tell me he didn't ship them?
It's a kid who's always at his computer.
So probably.
Probably.
Hello, player. Thanks for picking me.
Yeah, that sounds weird. There's a freaky-ass chief who seemed to be a mix between Max Headroom and the genie.
Ivy, 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 you simply must learn to accessorize!
Regrettably so. And the duo had to chase Carmen around the world to get back the famous monuments that they'll inevitably homeschool us about.
Okay, listen up, gumshoes. You'll be heading to Holland. It's the home of wooden shoes, tulips, and the world-famous windmills.
On the one hand, this doesn't work as well as the game show because the investment came from having to know the information to get further. Here, the show just kind of comes to a halt to teach you something.
He used bold colors and violent brushstrokes, often slashing at the canvas as he painted.
On the other hand, though, it did have a story to each one, and Carmen herself was just as stylish and cool a villain as you would want her to be. In fact, a lot of the time she would leave the clues on purpose because she loved the thrill of the chase. At first I thought this was kind of lame, but then the more I thought about it, how clumsy is Carmen in the other versions to always leave something behind? Here, she's at least owning up to her stupidity. The show lasted a good while with 4 seasons, and even though the education stuff did feel a little forced, it was still cool seeing the Queen of Thieves do what she does, and I guess help us get a little smarter watching it too. It was decent enough for what it was. Hey kids, what's more awkward than movie Spider-Man?
Other movie Spider-Man?
And?
Cartoon Spider-Man?
And?
Other cartoon Spider-Man?
Yes! Writing the tales of X-Men, heck, even doing a crossover with them later. Spider-Man tried capturing the same complex characters and ideas their other hit Marvel show had.
Did they?
It's complicated. No. Spider-Man was great if you wanted the experience of the comic, but it didn't really segue into an emotional TV series. It might have been surprisingly overambitious, as every second it's either explaining what's going on, explaining the emotions, explaining the inner monologue. It could never take a break.
Then we have to assemble those of us who are left and go protect the site of the Doomsday Complex.
I feel like I'm witnessing a part of this country's history.
After seeing the beacon, we always assembled here.
I had to crack open a map to remember where this building was.
How have you been, Madeline?
Oh my god, breathe! You guys are going faster than the dialogue in The Social Network! The CG city wasn't a bad idea at the time, but now it just sticks out like a sore thumb. In other instances, the CG background matches the look of the painted background. This just looks like he's swinging into a screensaver. But those are just little details. Maybe it could still work if the writing was sharp.
Anyway, this lizard thing is probably just an urban myth. Wait a minute, looks like I was myth-taken.
Oh. But again, to its credit, it did take a lot from the comics, trying to cram in as much as you can in a kid's show. I just think it did it too damn much. It wasn't Power Rangers silly, but it wasn't X-Men serious either. It was something in between. But it seemed to be enough, as this Marvel show lasted 5 seasons, so I guess it must have made a big connection with a lot of fans. And granted, there were some really cool things to see, like Tony Jay as the Kingpin, Mark Hamill as the Hobgoblin, not Topher Grace as Venom. And to think we thought this would be the greatest Marvel team-up we would ever see on any screen.
Power of lightning, strike again!
Power of web shooters, get real sticky!
Sure. These days it sounds a little corny.
Looking back, it's not as bad as I remember, but its pacing is still way too fast for us to absorb every adventure. It's got its fans though, and I can see why. It was a huge hit, and anything that makes this a little less awkward must be doing something right. But for my money, the best superheroes always shouted,
"Oh, can I say it? I've always wanted to say it."
Go ahead.
Fork!
It was one word. It was one goddamn word with 5 letters. You couldn't even say 5 letters!
This is nice.
While there were comedic takes on superheroes in the past, none were quite as funny or odd as The Tick. Again, leaning its writing towards the adults rather than kids, The Tick told the story of a nigh invulnerable, absent-minded superhero and his voice of reason sidekick, Arthur.
You can't fight evil with a macaroni duck!
I'll be the judge of that.
While the idea based on the cult comic went through several different incarnations in the future, most people agree this is the one that was the most faithful to the source. It did what many superhero parodies do, adding a big slice of reality to our comic book fantasy. But the biggest punch it lampooned is just how many damn superheroes there are. Particularly now with the Marvel Cinematic Universe, The Tick addressed what would happen if so many of these side characters and spin-offs really did exist in the same universe.
This is all the heroes you could find?
Well, it's such short notice. These people have lives too, you know.
Though sometimes the animation could be a little choppy and the timing a hint off, The Tick still had original writing with very enthusiastic characters.
But what really pursued us? Where were we really trapped? Come on, Arthur! Get meta with me!
Tick himself is infectiously positive. He just loves being the hero, but he never came across as egotistical. He really believes his corny speeches and one-liners, thinking they inspire people just as much as they inspire him.
What pursued us were our own obsessions. I'm good, you're evil. I'm a woman, you're a man. What does it all mean? Nothing.
He never felt cynical or mean-spirited. He doesn't think much about what he's saying, but rather the way he's saying it. To a point where even silverware can serve as a battle cry.
Boon!
It had a modest run of 3 seasons and continued to run in syndication, only increasing its cult following. Though there be many variations on this crazy idea, by far the one who came the closest in strangeness and comedy was the one on Fox Kids.
That's cool, but can I have a show based on a book series where the scariest part was the cover?
No.
Oh.
But you can have a show that's less scary than Are You Afraid of the Dark? Goosebumps was based on the hugely successful book series by R.L. Stine. It was wild, imaginative, and not the least bit scary.
Hey!
You know I'm right. You all know I'm right! When I was younger, I was always pissed off that all the scary shows I watched were never scary. Goosebumps, Are You Afraid of the Dark, even Tales from the Crypt I never found frightening. But as I got older, I realized that's not really what they were about. The intent wasn't to scare you, the intent was to have fun in a classically spooky setup. One of these episodes is about a killer sponge, for God's sake. The hokey acting and over-the-top writing only add to the B-movie quality that honestly kinda gets better every time I see it. That doesn't mean they weren't trying, it just means it should be enjoyed on a different level than you might expect. It's like getting angry if a Scooby-Doo episode isn't scary. It's just not what you're supposed to be looking for. Every show had a new monster or a new scenario that would tie into the character's persona or fears, similar to The Twilight Zone. Except, you know, laughably stupid. It took me a while to warm up to this series, but now watching it with the intent of having a good time, that's exactly what I get out of it. A good time. It's one of those kooky kid shows I weirdly enough like even more as an adult than I do as a kid. Just for entirely different reasons. Sadly though, this is when Fox Kids began their downward spiral.
Oh, geesh. How long did they last after that?
Just a mere 6 years.
That's stupid long.
I know, but here's the thing. Warner Brothers was starting their own network with their own kids programming called Kids WB. And when they started up, guess what they took with them? Animaniacs, Looney Tunes, and Batman. They even did spin-off shows like Superman, Pinky and the Brain, and their own little Japanese import that was dirt cheap to make and would run for years and years. In fact, even the first Animaniacs episode on Kids WB was a parody of Fox's biggest show, Power Rangers.
Hey, what's wrong with your mouth?
It's all fuzzy.
Fox would still do well, but this was a big bite for them. And many of the upcoming shows did well, but not nearly as well as before. Another Spielberg show called Toonsylvania tried capturing a darker tone on the Animaniacs formula, but sadly the writing wasn't on point and it didn't last very long. I talked in great detail about Sam and Max in another episode. It was creative, but a little too unfocused, earning only one season. And then of course there's this. That's like summing up the Titanic in one sentence. I need a full episode to go into what's wrong with that.
Yeah.
Good call.
After that, Fox Kids went the same route Kids WB went, importing more and more Japanese shows after seeing not only how easier they are to put out, but also how cheap they are to do. And sadly, I stopped watching after that. If we were going to go into this in more detail, we would need people that actually grew up watching this. Okay, go ahead.
Hey kids, remember this incredible writing?
That's a lot of fish.
They made a show out of it.
Oh, God! Shh!
Godzilla the series was a direct continuation of the 1998 Godzilla movie. It featured some actors from the film lending their voices to reprise their roles.
Including Bart Simpson.
Thankfully, Matthew Broderick wasn't one of them, but his character, Nick
Totopoulos.
Totopoulos.
It's Greek, haha.
Did return. The only surviving offspring of the Godzilla that attacked New York in the movie imprinted onto Nick as its parent, and thus they used him as a government-sponsored Pokemon to fight other giant monsters.
That's so stupid, I'm surprised it wasn't in the 98 film.
So am I.
This series was received pretty well by fans of Godzilla, but honestly, following the 98 film, there was nowhere to go but up. We did get some great kaiju fights in the show though, so I guess I can look past Godzilla's Dick Tracy chin.
Well, I guess it's better than any of the Power Rangers shows.
And then there's Power Rangers in Space and Lost Galaxy. Power Rangers in Space wrapped up the show's initial run and was supposed to be the series finale. As we know, that didn't happen.
Much to our regret. I don't like it back here.
What on the surface seemed like Star Trek Light actually became one of the most popular and well-received seasons in the show's history. They went much further with character development than they did in most of the previous seasons. There were decently deep arcs for a kid's show that featured the Red Ranger's long-lost sister being brainwashed as the Power Rangers' main enemy, and even more multi-dimensional villains. There's plenty more to talk about with this season, which finished the Zordon era and ended up saving the franchise. But some of you may just know it for their crossover with the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles. Cowabunga, I guess.
Hey, we have a deal. No next mutation unless he's fully being tortured.
It's okay, just the mention of the idea hurts me.
The next season, Power Rangers Lost Galaxy kept the outer space theme, but began a new phase in the PR legacy. Starting here, every season introduced a new cast with new powers, Zords, etc., and that became the status quo for the series moving forward. Saban's big plan to get this phase going? Sword in the Stone in space. Woo? Actually, this season was pretty good. I enjoyed it quite a bit.
But I know what you're thinking. Those shows needed a lot more Ryan Gosling as young Hercules.
It's actually amazing how much we weren't thinking that.
Well, Fox Kids was.
I was thinking that.
Yup, there was a spin-off of the Kevin Sorbo show starring a young Ryan Gosling. I always speculated this was just another Goosebumps episode he was in.
It is scary enough.
What else do you need to know about this show? Well, I think this clip says it all.
What is a performance that you've given? Something that you're insanely proud of?
My work on young Hercules.
Really?
I had a fake tan, leather pants, was fighting imaginary monsters. They weren't really there, but I was acting like they were there.
My God, I think we're all in a Goosebumps episode.
We also can't forget about Beast Wars. This is one of my favorite childhood shows. It traded in cool cars, trucks, and jets for animals like rats and ants. Believe me, it's way cooler than it sounds. This was my generation's Transformers show, and I absolutely loved it. Beast Wars, along with Reboot, was among the first all-CG animated series. The early computerized look doesn't hold up all that well, but for the time, it was revolutionary and set the show apart from most other things on TV. The stories were great, the characters were great, it was just a really solid animated series. That being said, you stay away from this, Michael Bay! You hear me? Don't you dare defile Rat Trap, Tigatron, or Optimus Primal! For more on this series, you can check out my top 5 best episodes, right here on the channel.
If my face isn't on it, I don't watch it.
Like I haven't heard that before. Beast Machines Transformers was the less popular sequel series to Beast Wars. It took place almost immediately after and was dark, sobering, and kind of depressing at times. You know, for the kids. The change in tone and design wasn't something anyone was asking for, but it did end all the stories that started in Beast Wars and has gained a small, dedicated following over the years.
Blah, blah, blah. Get to the more hardcore stuff.
Oh, you mean like Frank Miller?
Yeah! Wait, what?
Yeah, there was a show based on a Frank Miller comic.
Watch the skies coming at you, a hero.
Big Guy and Rusty the Boy Robot was a show based on a short comic written by Frank Miller. There really isn't too much crossover between the show and the comic, with the show actually being more fleshed out than the comic.
Is Samuel L. Jackson in a Nazi uniform?
No.
It's a good start.
Rusty is the most advanced robot ever made, with a complicated AI and ability to feel emotions. He was meant to be the successor to Big Guy, an advanced robot that protects Earth. However, Rusty's emotional circuits and AI are young, and he therefore acts like a child. Rusty needs to learn how to be the protector of Earth. Big Guy is recommissioned so he can teach Rusty. Big Guy and Rusty was one of the more complex and mature shows in the Year 10 lineup. It was pretty interesting and unique. Although it was never my favorite show, I do remember being engaged by it and wanting to see what happened next.
The Big Guy and Rusty.
Well, it's good to know not everything was a Japanese import.
And then there was Digimon.
Yeah, okay.
Digimon, digital monsters, Digimon are the champions.
When Pokemon became a smash hit, Fox Kids tried to capitalize on that market and trend by introducing the world of Digimon. 7 kids at a summer camp are transported to a digital world, creatively called the Digi-World. There, they discover they are the Digidestined, who must help save the digital and real world with the help of their partner digital monsters, or Digimon. They are also given Digi-devices, which transport them between the real and digital worlds and can help their Digimon digivolve into other forms.
Say Digi again! I dare you! I double dare you!
Digi.
Well, now I'm mad!
The show was actually a lot of fun. Although it never reached the fever pitch of Pokemon, it was received well by audiences. Although there was fan demand that the anime be shown in its entirety, as the Fox Kids version was edited and changed to fit a more humorous tone than the original Japanese show. And who could ever forget that theme song?
Digimon, digital monsters, Digimon are the champions.
You know, I just got that damn song out of my head and you put it right back in there!
Oh, I thought you were still humming DuckTales. Woo!
Because of Digimon's success, we also got Monster Rancher, another monster show that was meant to compete with the success of Pokemon. Monster Rancher was first a video game before being made into an anime that Fox Kids picked up. In the game, you use discs to unlock monsters that the player trains to compete in tournaments. In the show, a boy named Genki receives a disc to use while playing. The disc ends up transporting him to a different world where the monsters are real and created by scanning stone discs in temples. Like Digimon, Monster Rancher was edited to make it more suitable for audiences, removing more dramatic elements from the series. I remember loving the show as a kid, but honestly, it was a bit bland and basically an overglorified commercial.
So, an anime. Oh, Christ, I hit a nerve.
Fox did give Spider-Man another go with Spider-Man Unlimited, a loose sequel to the '94 series while having a strange and somewhat confusing plot that sent Spider-Man to a duplicate world on the far side of the sun called Counter-Earth. Normally this would be like a parallel dimension or something, but apparently that's not exactly what Unlimited was going for. Instead, we got a really weird futuristic planet for Spider-Man to fight Venom and Carnage on while freeing humans from oppression.
Wow, this is making his deal with the devil almost sound credible.
Due to legal issues, this series couldn't draw from any of the decades of source material that came before it, or even use the standard Spider-Man suit for most of its run. There have been some awesome designs for alternate spider suits made over the years, but a web cape? Unique, to say the least. The opening theme sounds like it's trying to be Batman Beyond, but comes off like its goofy clubbing cousin.
Like clubbing a seal, I think you mean.
I get that Spider-Man the Animated Series is an insanely tough act to follow, but Spider-Man Unlimited was a mess from the beginning, both behind and on the screen, that is best skipped over by fans of the webhead.
And then there's Angela Anaconda.
My name is Angela. Hey, hello. Welcome to my very own show. I'll introduce my friends to you.
Did any of us actually watch this show?
No!
I can see why.
By year 12, Fox Kids was losing momentum and pulled back weekday scheduling to only Saturday mornings. By then, the writing must have been on the wall because the following year, Fox Kids stopped airing programs and never returned. Though many of these shows would exist in reruns, and there's more than enough kids shows everywhere now, that magic collection of the right talent for the right age group at the right time never seemed as prominent. Every Saturday morning built an anticipation like no other. Every visit home from school revved up excitement every kid could feel. For a pretty awesome time in our childhoods, we had a cool clubhouse that lived in our TV. And they told us great jokes, classic stories, the latest comics, and even taught us a thing or two. It was everything you thought of when you heard the word Saturday morning. It was a perfect experience so much of us were so happy to have. And we couldn't be more thankful to the awesome people who gave us some absolutely wonderful Saturday mornings on Fox Kids.
Speaking of which, we should probably start getting ready for bed.
What? Oh yeah, I guess we have been watching well over 12 hours of shows.
So what do we do now?
Well, protocol says we should be playing video games past our bedtime.
Laugh and scream at basically nothing.
And have deep philosophical talks while trying to go to sleep.
Sounds good.
Oh my god, duck season is the best!
Shoot the dog! Shoot the dog!
Oh, yeah.
Will Smith!
Malcolm? Do you believe in God?
Believe or see?
You see God?
Well, yeah. I was thinking about that, and it had me thinking, what if Bowser's the good guy?
Wow.
Oh my god.
You know?
And Mario is really the bad guy?
Okay. But is Satan Waluigi?
No, that's just not true. That's a dirty lie.
Well, if Mario's the bad guy, then Luigi is Satan.
Oh!
I'm totally lost. How do we go from God to Bowser? I missed that.
Video games
are God.
Are all.
Okay.
It's my religion, actually.
Yeah.
Thanks.
Yeah.
So, like, video games equal God?
There's all different, denominations.
Yeah,
Right.
sects.
Like, Tamara believes in the denomination of PlayStation, but, like, Walter and I are Nintendoites, so, it can be awkward sometimes. I have a PlayStation, like, don't tell Nintendo, but, like, I have a PlayStation, because, like, sometimes you gotta explore things, man.
Yeah, you gotta do stuff. Well, while you're young, you know what I mean?
I think I'm an atheist because I have a Dreamcast.
Oh, the Dreamcast.
You know what? I started with the Dreamcast, man. It's fine.
Yeah?
Everything's gonna be okay.
I don't know, man. I don't think my mom's gonna let me sleep over here anymore.